everyone, and welcome to the LTH product briefing. I'm delighted today to be joined by Daniel Porras, the Chief Commercial Officer at Legatics. Welcome, Dan.
Thanks, Nikki.
It's great to have you on. I've been a fan of Legatics for a long time, and indeed it's been in the market for quite some time and really has built up, I think, tremendous maturity in what it does and how it does that, which is, I think, probably evident to people in terms of how it's being adopted. It started in the UK and now has also some quite significant traction in the US. Can you tell people a bit about Legatics and how it is maturing?
Absolutely. Thanks, Nikki. So yeah, Legatics has been around for about 10 years now. So we did start in the UK and it was focused initially around banking and finance use case. So what Legatics is now is a legal transaction management platform. It provides a centralized place for people to collaborate on and close their deals. It started out more focused specifically on some of the big pain points that are faced on large banking and finance deals for managing the conditions precedent process and then the pain involved at the end of a deal with creating a closing set or closing binder. Legatics has evolved to be used across all manner of transactions. The popular use cases remain banking and finance, all manner of banking and finance deals, real estate, corporate, but we do have a number of other use cases as well that Legatics keeps expanding into. So they can span from restructurings, reorgs, even employment litigation use cases as well. We started in the UK, that is headquarters for Legatics, and that is where now we see that we are now market standard in particular practice areas for how transactions are run. But as you noted, we are seeing increasing traction in the US market as well. So we work with a majority of the UK top 20, but also more than half of our top 10 firms. And we're actually seeing wider adoption generally across the AmLaw 200, including a number of purely domestic US firms.
Interesting. And it really is end-to-end transaction management, which also distinguishes it from some of the other offerings in the market. Dan, can you tell us a bit about what you're going to show us today? Because obviously end-to-end transaction management, that is a lot and probably cannot be demoed in about 10 minutes. So where are you going to focus today?
Yeah, with end-to-end transaction management, it provides for a number of parts to do with the transaction process. So the bit that I'll focus on are three component parts within Legatics. So firstly, collaborative lists. So taking what would otherwise be, I'll talk through the three. So collaborative list signing and then closing set creation. So collaborative lists is taking otherwise static checklists and turning them into dynamic lists with high levels of automation in the workflow, and then also providing for collaboration between the various counterparties. With signing, we have two streams. So we have an enhancement to DocuSign functionality through an API. So it enables people to have visibility, what's going on as part of the DocuSign process. You can set up the pages for signature via DocuSign and then actually see via a dashboard what the status is of the individual signatures and then push it back down to Legatics once you have your fully signed documents. And then we have a separate stream on signing, which streamlines the wet ink signing process. So we have a pre-trained AI model that identifies where the signature pages are in the document, tags them, enables you to create the signature packs. And then when you receive the signed signature pages back, stitch them together into a fully executed version of the document, again with a pre-trained AI model. And then finally, one of the great pains of any transactional lawyer is closing set creation. So the ability to create a closing set at the end of the deal once you've got all those signed documents in minutes, not hours or days. And I know when I was practicing as a lawyer, I wasn't once able to recover any of the time associated with creating a closing set. So those will be the three areas that I'll primarily focus on today.
Fantastic. Let us take a look.
Great. So I'll just go ahead and share my screen. What I'm going to do today as well, Nikki, is just focus on two of the use cases. So what I will do is I will go through the initial setting up of a digital list and importing it and showing the workflow within a banking and finance transaction. And then we'll switch to a corporate deal and we'll manage a signing process and create a closing set.
Great.
So what you're looking at the moment is the dashboard within a deal that's being set up. The thing to note here is that only the law firm needs to have a Legatics license. You can invite external parties, and if they haven't used Legatics before, all they'll need to do is follow the prompts in an email to set up their account and gain access. It's easy to set up different participants. I won't go through in detail today, but you can basically set up the various different participants, so the roles, the organizations, and ultimately individuals. But we've got that all pre-set up within our deal here. So how do we actually create the digital list? We've got multiple lists that are running here at the moment, and I just want to show how we create a list. So I can click on Create List, and you'll see that we have a few different ways to create a list here. So we can create from a template. Now, these can be Legatics templates, or they can be preset templates that the firm can create. So you can give certain people admin access to create those. You can create from an existing list. So if you've just done a very similar deal and you want to replicate, this is just the issues list that I ran on my last deal, you could import it from that as the starting point. And you also have the ability to import directly from a table in Word, Excel, or legal text. What I'm going to show is the template, and you'll see here we have Legatics templates that are preset here. We also have, this is our dummy firm, but this is where you would see the various different templates that you've set up as the firm that are approved for usage. So let's go in here and let's start with a conditions precedent checklist, and we can give it a name here. I'm going to call it the second conditions precedent checklist, and we've got one in our matter. And I'm going to set who the approving parties are. So we're going to be working on a project financing deal. And let's say we've got a syndicate of 3 banks who need to provide approval on the various different conditions precedent. So these are the 3 banks who are going to provide approval. You can set who has the ability to see the checkboxes. And what this does is it creates the underlying structure for the list. You have the ability to very easily modify the rows. You can move things around. We could see the content in some of these, for example. But this is the basic underlying structure. And what I can now do is I have the ability to either create line by line, but more easily will be if I can actually just import content from, say, a table or an underlying document. So what is common in a lot of project financing deals is you get, for example, the Loan Market Association that has quite standardized language sitting in a schedule in the back of the agreement. And lawyers will have to basically copy this line by line into a table to get going. So what we can actually do here is we can copy this text. And if I come in and I click on import here, so I have the ability to import a table. For quite a few of the US deals, it might actually be a table that's already set up and you just import the table, but it would work the same way. What I'm going to show is how we can import the legal text. So it's as simple as pasting in the legal text. And if we click continue, you'll see here that using pattern recognition, it's gone through and it's actually it's done a lot of the formatting for us, a lot of the things that the lawyers would do. So it's picked up what should be a heading, the subheading. Now, if I was a lawyer doing this and it was in the table, I'd have to copy and paste a certified copy of each time so that it's a standalone line item. What you have the ability to do here is you can actually say, okay, I'd like to repeat that text. So that then repeats the text along. And we now have a defined term. Again, if you've got, let's say, 5 obligors, you'd have to create 5 more rows underneath and then change the defined term. If we go to the right-hand side, it actually has picked up that obligor is a defined term. And we can put in here what they are. So medbank. And if we click save, that's automatically split it out for each of them. Now we've got a grammatically incorrect sentence. We can delete that line by line, or we can just delete it at the top. That does it the whole way through. We've got the same again with a certified copy of. So on the right-hand side, it remembers the defined term. We can very quickly go through and work our way through the list.
So Dan, now, you can edit in line in the text itself.
You can. The idea with this import, it's not to get it 100% of the way there. It's to help with the sort of 80, 90% of the work that the lawyers would be doing. What we're going to do next is we actually click continue and it will create the underlying list, the digital list for us. This is just the ability for us to quite quickly get that underlying text into a table. So something else that, because it's pattern recognition, this is meant to be one director certificate stating 3 things, but it's set it out as 3 different deliverables. You can very easily come here, merge the list, and this is now one deliverable. So you can do this and work your way through, and then we can click continue. This allows us to match up the different columns with our underlying structure that we have in the template. So we can make the clause reference line up with references and the text align with the column, with the condition. And if we click import, this has now pulled it through in the underlying document. We can very quickly come through and we can get rid of the tips columns at the top. So we can delete those. And we now basically have our underlying list. We can tidy things up by making it prettier. We can make any edits that weren't captured in the last very easily because we have the admin rights. What we can also do is on the right-hand side here, we have the statuses. Because this is a template, we actually have the statuses that are set up. We can fully customize these. We can change the colors. We can change what the names are. The other thing that you can do is you can set up automated actions. So we might want to say whenever a new row is added, the basic workflow for these particular transactions is going to be for the borrower to provide the initial documentation. So we're going to assign that to the borrower side. This means the way we've set up all of the organizations and roles and the participants, they will now be notified that these things require their attention.
How will they be done? Is that through the platform or does it trigger an email?
It triggers an email notification. So the way Legatics has been set up, one of my pet peeves when working as an M&A lawyer is we'd work with virtual data rooms, and the intention was that it was to make your life easier and to reduce the number of emails, and you'd get pinged every single time a new document was uploaded to the platform. So with Legatics, it's all about driving the deal forward. So the default is you'll get an aggregate on one email a day that will tell you in aggregate everything that requires your attention. It can be changed. So if you're the main attorney that's driving the deal, you can get notified more regularly. You can also, it's all live within the platform, so you can always refresh and just see if anything further is updated and it requires your attention. But the idea is to try and reduce your inbox, not bombard it. So that's the way it works. But yes, it's an email notification that you would get telling you what requires your attention. If a new version is uploaded, we're going to say us as the law firm, Lambda Law, we want to be notified. And then similarly, if something's changed in relation to the approvals, we want to be the gatekeeper for that. So that's the workflow that we've pre-set up. Here, if we want to do in bulk the changing some of the statuses, it's very easy to come in. We can edit selected and we can go to the particular status. We can say that this is all to be provided by the borrower. But if anything new is added after this, it will by default happen that way. So the way the workflow would then work from here is this has all been set up. And if we go to the dashboard, you'll see we have our different lists. This is one that's already in flow. And we actually have here, we're viewing this as Lambda Law. So we have a take action button. And if we click through into that, it takes us to our to-do list. So it actually shows us the things that are waiting on us. And then you can take the action, it will drop off your to-do list and then onto the to-do list of the next relevant party. You'll see here, because we've set up these 8 actions for the borrower, you can come in and you can actually view the matter as if you were one of the other parties. So Windico here as, let's say, the borrower side. This is rebuilding the platform, and you can see that there's a take action 8 next to their name. So when they logged in, they would see the actions on the various lists, and they can click through, they can take the action, upload the relevant documents, and it will drop off their list and onto the list of the next relevant person to drive the deal forward. So let's just show what the workflow would look like within Legatics if we were actually running that deal collaboratively with the various parties. We have here some articles. So it's on the borrower to upload. They're going to come, they're going to upload the articles into the platform, and you'll see our automated workflow is that when a document is uploaded, this automatically updates to awaiting review by Lambda Law. So we will be notified that this document now requires our attention. We're the gatekeeper. We can look at the document and we can see if we're happy with it. Let's add one more just to give some color. So we've got these 2 documents that have been uploaded. So we can look at this document. If we're happy with it and it's ready for approval by the lenders, we click to be approved. And this now triggers a notification to go to the lenders to provide their approval. So instead of what would otherwise be the process of having to send this document by email to each of the lenders individually to get their approval, wait and chase them to get their approvals back. The protocol can be for someone on the lender side, once they've seen this, to come in, and if they're happy with it, to actually provide the tick of approval directly within Legatics. So Bank 1's done it, Bank 2. Once Bank 3 does it, you see this automatically updates to approved. And all of this flows through live into the dashboard on the top. So you see here, we've now got 1 document that's approved, we've got 1 awaiting review, and we've still got the remaining documents that are to be provided by the parties. And we can see on the left-hand side, this is more progressed. You'll be waiting for the green bar to progress fully across, and then you've satisfied all of the conditions precedent, and you can move forward with the transaction. So that's the essential part of how the lists run. Now, there are a ton of different use cases that we could go into. It's used for due diligence questionnaires and M&A transactions. Actually, just switching to that for a second and having a look at a few of the lists. You can see here we're running a competitive bid process. So we've got a bidder tracker going. We're running a reps and warranties process, or what can sometimes in the UK and other places be called a warranty disclosure exercise, issues list, steps plan. We also have a documents list that's sitting in here. So you can have multiple lists that are running within Legatics, and there are a number of different use cases and workflows that you have. I'll check if you've got any questions, Nikki, but otherwise I'm happy to move to the signing workflow within a documents list.
Yeah, no, this is really cool. I particularly like how you can see progress on all of these things in one dashboard. It's so convenient, but yeah, let's move on.
Great. So if we come into the documents list, what we can see we have here are all of the key transaction documents that are within our documents list. Similarly, you can have you see it's a slightly different workflow here. So it's who's to draft, who's to complete something, awaiting review, something in agreed form, fully customizable. customizable, but again, this is a different template focused around the corporate deals. You can set different automated actions. What's useful here is when you set it up initially, you can agree on who's holding the pen on a particular version of a particular document. And then you'll see that there are multiple versions here. And as you're exchanging the drafts, you can actually see the different versions and they're all tracked. You can see they're time-stamped. And this becomes your central store of truth for how the deal's progressing, how many different turns. You don't have that risk that you are marking up version 2 and there's actually a version 3. Everyone agrees that, what lives in Legatics is the latest version. You can leave comments. There's also the ability to set access permissions. So you can come in and you can apply permissions to a column. That would then mean maybe you just want to keep that as an internal comments column. So it's only for you, the attorneys that are working on that deal, or maybe it's just between you and the client, but the various other parties can't see it. And we showed that view as functionality. You can check access permissions have been set up correctly before inviting externally other parties to it, but it enables you to work in a single space. Let's say we've worked through our deal and the various documents are now in agreed form. We'll see here I've got an example sale and purchase agreement that's in agreed form, and you can see a little squiggle that's here that says open in the signing view. So if I've marked that for signing, that sends it to our signing view, and I can click here on go to signing. And what I have here are the various documents that have been set up for signature. You can see that some of these are in the process of being signed via DocuSign, but instead of it being a black box from a DocuSign perspective, where maybe the individual has set up the envelope and nobody else has visibility as to exactly what the status is of the signatures, via the API, it actually tells us what's the status of those. So some of those have been delivered, some of them have been signed. So you can keep track of what's going on and know how to progress it. And someone else who's not directly involved can log in and can see the status. The alternative workflow, though, is a tool that Legatics has developed that enables you to actually manage the wetting signing process. So we've got here the various parties that are set up, the signatory, and this is our sale and purchase agreement. So I can click here and I can do this. I'm just going to demo it in one document today in the interest of time, but you could do this on 10, 100 documents, which enables you to do it very quickly. So I'm coming up to the top here where it has actions, and I'm going to create a signature pack. What this does is, using our pre-trained AI model, it actually identifies where in that underlying document are the signature pages. If I click on review, you'll see that it highlights in blue. You can see the squiggle blue that's identified the pages that our AI has identified have a signature page, but you as the attorney are still in control of it to check, is it the right page before actually then assigning the signatory. So we can see little thumbnails that give us a sense, yes, this looks correct. We can then see the bigger view as to what it is on the page here. So we can see that this is the seller and the buyer. So I can now tag this page as having the buyer and the seller signatories. And then I can very quickly just move to next page. This is moved along here as well. This is the guarantor. I'm going to make that the Lucy signing on behalf of equity. Now, if I had multiple documents, I'd just keep clicking next page and it would scroll through all the various documents that I have. Given I'm just doing one, I'm going to click on create signature page. Now you have the ability to include the document or just the signature pages, or to rename it. I'm just going to pull the signature pages, and this is creating the signature packs for us. The signature packs are split between either parties or signatories. So you have the option, do you want to send it to the individual or do you want to send it by organization? So if we click through, you can see here that's by the party. And if we want, we have the individual signatories that you could click through, and it will then just list the documents for them to sign. The next step will be, these are now, they've been sent out via email for signature. So we can update the status here so that people have visibility as to what's happening with this particular document. So this is now sitting out for signature, and the signed signature pages will come back. Now they might come in one email, they might come in multiple. It's often chaotic and some signatures are upside down. What you can do in Legatics is you can come in and you can actually upload the signed signature pages and then match it back to the page that it's the party that it's replacing. So I'm going to add in here our signed signature pages, and I'm going to ask Legatics to match to the documents. So it's told us that it's identified 6 signature pages using the AI. That's on the left-hand side. And what we can do here is we can search for the underlying document. So we can see here that this is the sale and purchase agreement. It's been signed by the seller and the buyer on the same page. So you might have only one party is signed on one page, but here I can say that, okay, we've got Richard's signature and we've got Sarah's signature. I'm going to go to the next page. The next page is, again, that same sale and purchase agreement. So I'm going to match it up to that document, and it is the guarantor. So again, if you've got multiple pages, which we actually do here, I could go through and match it to different documents and do it all in one go. But here, I'm just going to do it on the sale and purchase agreement. And what this has now done is, you see it's actually matched the signature pages to the relevant party. And what it's ready to do now is collate the document. So if I click on the left-hand side and I click on the action here to collate, this is basically that same pre-trained model to pull out the signature pages as it is to connect them back in and to replace them. So if we click on edit documents, you'll see it's the 2 pages here that have been identified, and it's even flagged the pages that it thinks it should replace. So here's the unsigned page and here's the signed page. I'm going to come and very easily click on the X here to delete the underlying page. I'm going to do the same for this one. And then you can very quickly and easily come to the top, and I can either stamp with a date, or in free text, I could type in, what's today, 2 May 2025. And now I've got my fully dated, fully signed document. So I can click collate. And this now is pulling that all back together, and it's versioning up the document within Legatics here. So we've got an executed version. We can check it if we would like. So it's opened it up, and we can go through and we can see that this is now just our signed signature pages. And if we then go back here, if we go back to the underlying documents list, it's also versioned up in our view here, and we're now happy with it. We can then come through and we can say this is fully signed. All of that then updates in real time on our dashboard. So we've got one more document that's fully signed. And once everything is then fully signed and sitting in Legatics through whichever flow that you've done, you have the ability to very easily create your closing set or binder from directly within Legatics. If you come through and you click on more, you can click on create binder, and we can give it a name depending on where you're based at. So we're going to call it closing set. I know when I was a lawyer, we called them transaction Bibles in Australia and New Zealand, and I think the UK does that as well, but we're going to call them our closing set. And we can then click here, and this has the ability, it's pulled the latest version of each of the documents through to create the closing set. We can rename the documents, we can rename the underlying text, you can collapse and move whole sections around. We actually have an index here that can get you to the various different parts. But ultimately, when we're happy with this, we can click on export, and we have the ability to download either to our computer or to our document management system. So one thing I didn't mention earlier was when you're uploading the files, we were doing it with a borrower workflow, but let's say it's the law firm uploading the files. We do have an integration with both iManage and NetDocuments. But here we could push this down to your document management system. Here I'm just going to do it locally. And this has created now for us our closing set. And you can see we've got numbered and named the documents, and then we have the underlying index. This is just in our Legatics house style, but this would be customized for the particular firm. So it would be in the firm house style, and you've got hyperlinks through to all of the underlying documents. So literally a couple clicks of the button as opposed to hours or days of pulling together a closing set.
When you open that, I just was not expecting it to be in that format. That's very cool, especially with the underlying links and presumably a full table of contents at the outset and everything as well.
Yeah, so that, I'll just pull it back up. But yeah, the table of contents is as part of the index. Yeah. So you've got,
that's cool.
So that's the whistle stop tour. There is obviously a ton of detail and different workflows, and we haven't touched on things like permissioning. Every action that takes place within Legatics is tracked. So there's a full audit trail from a risk and compliance perspective. But interestingly, the thing that this has become popular for as firms start using Legatics at scale is some of the data and insights that actually come from Legatics as well. So if you think about it, when a deal is started, when a deal's finished, so you've got duration of the deal, we've got time-stamped every time a version of the document has been uploaded. So what's the time between different turns of a document? How many turns of the document have there been? So when you're up against law firm X, maybe there are 9 turns of a document, whereas when you're against law firm Y, there are only 4. How does that feed into how you're pricing for your deals? So people are starting, you can download, I won't go through it today, but we've got a whole separate admin app that's available to people who are assigned as administrators, and there's a ton of data in there. And all of that data can be downloaded as a JSON or a CSV file. And people are combining that with their BI tools along with pricing information and other information to make smarter business and intelligence decisions, which is, becoming really popular.
Oh, that's very cool. Thank you, Dan. I must say, one of the things that really stands out to me as you walk through that is just how much of the workflow that you're describing is manual and administrative and has absolutely nothing to do with the law. It's literally just that annoying going from one place to another, renaming, formatting. It seems like a no-brainer to me if you can eliminate that, because we don't really want our lawyers spending all of that time doing that kind of thing. And also just the extent to which it would minimize human error and limit risk and liability, because there is a lot of potential for risk around closing signatures and that kind of thing. Really impressive workflows. Thank you so much.
No problem. The other thing people take for granted is sometimes for certain deals, they might go quiet for a particular period of time for example, and they need to then get picked back up. And actually having everything centrally on a platform, there's been a lot of feedback that it makes it a lot easier. By the time the deal's picked back up, maybe the main trainee or lawyer has moved on to another team or has left the firm, and actually the ability to just pick it back up really quickly and efficiently.
Absolutely. Yeah, because you have such visibility across the whole deal. And I know we've captured this previously, but also firms have indicated a significant time saving, which translates into boost in revenue from deal work.
Correct. Yeah. So firms have done some analysis of deals that they've run on Legatics and those they haven't, and the impact that it has on gross margins. We know of a few firms that have run this project, and one firm noted an average 8% increase in gross margin for deals that they ran on Legatic. That sort of stat gets the attention of the senior partners within an organization, but also managing partner, COO, and it makes it even more of a no-brainer to adopt, to use.
Amazing. Well, Dan, thank you so much. If people want to get in touch with you and Legatics, we will put the URL for Legatics across the bottom of the screen. But should they just reach out on the contact form? What's the best way to get in touch?
Yeah, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, get in touch directly. But also, if you go to the website, there's the ability to request a demo, and a member of the team will be able to get in touch and to dive into it in more detail.
Excellent. Well, thanks for joining us today, Dan. And thanks everyone for watching. See you next time.